Hey gorgeous, it's Paula and Tessa, and we're talking real estate 101 tonight. We've been doing several videos on the contract and the contingencies, and we're going to go over appraisals today. And so let's dive right in. My name is Paula. I'm a real estate professional in Washington State, and I've been in real estate for 15 years. My area is Southwest Washington, and my focus is based on the fact that real estate is the biggest investment for most people. And I do not believe that you can make the best decisions for yourself if you don't have all the information. So my clients leave happy because they know at the close of our transactions that they've made the best choices because they know they have all the information. So let's dive right in. There are several contingencies to a real estate transaction. You can have financing contingencies. You can have inspection contingencies. You can have a septic contingency. We call these addendum. But today we're going to talk appraisal. And appraisal is kind of the nail biter of the real estate transaction because that appraiser kind of holds the whole transaction. It's like one of the final things that can occur before a property transaction goes into escrow. And so when you're talking about your appraisal, this is something that is ordered by the lender. When your inspection contingency is complete, generally this is when the lender is notified, and then they order the appraisal. The appraisal is paid for by the buyer. It belongs to them. And, there is really no set time from the time an appraisal is ordered to the time an appraisal is conducted. But you get a notice or an email or a call. Hey, this is Joe, and I've been told we have an appraisal for a property for you. Yes, great. Let's schedule that. Once it's scheduled, you want to make sure that the listing agent or the seller's agent has been notified because you want to access the property. Now, this is something that when I first started in real estate really kind of freaked me out. Because when you sit down with a client and you've done the comps and you've done the CMAs and you've done the research and you create a price range, and generally I look at about a $10,000 price range. And for today's example, we're going to use a $500,000 home. So I would say, we're looking at between about $495 and $505, and let's say that we decided to list the home at $500,000. Now I know that if the buyer comes in and they have financing to purchase this home, an appraisal is going to occur. Now, one of the things that I will always tell my clients is that real estate's a living, breathing thing. A home nearby can sell for far less than it should have, and there would be a reason why. Maybe it's not in as good a shape as most of the homes around it, but that can affect the value of the home that you are purchasing or your client is purchasing. There's a lot of things that can affect the value of your home. I have a client who's got a beautiful little, it's about 1,000 square foot stick-built home, built around 1999, live in a lake community, and the area is gorgeous. It's quiet. There's some wildlife that comes through, but every other home in this community is a manufactured or modular home, which is going to affect the value of this property if they ever choose to sell it. It just does. So when I'm pricing out homes, I was getting freaked out. How is this home going to appraise? I mean, how do I know that I'm really on the mark here? Because I don't ever want to list a home that it's not going to end well. And I'll go into that a little bit. But what I started doing, and right from the start, I would go, say tomorrow was an appraisal on a property. I would go into all my programs and I would pull up everything I used to value this home. And generally it's already printed out in a file. And I would pull up current information. it's really not that far off, maybe a month time difference. But I would show up, and then I would meet the appraiser, and I would say, hey, I'm new at this. I really, really, really want to learn. So if you don't mind, I'd love to follow you around and ask you questions. If that's not okay, please tell me. And then I did pull some comps, so I'd love to know what your take is on this. And, I don't want to be pricing homes that aren't going to appraise. But I would go and talk to every appraiser on every transaction. And what I found was that I was pretty Johnny on the spot. And I'd have some appraisers that would take the comps and go, yeah, these are great comps, I can use these. And other that just said, no, these are not off, but the da-da-da-da. So over time, I've gotten way more confident, but it puts me in a position where I know what the appraisers are going to come out and do. And it's not, this is not set in stone. There's a science to it, but there's also an art to it, a little bit of an art to it. So I go out and I meet the appraiser, and I show him what comps I have been able to pull, ask him, what do you think on this? Because as I'm pricing these homes, I want to make sure I'm really pulling the good data. And I have never, I had one comeback that was not at value, but there was some challenges with the appraisal. I'm just going to leave it there, because the appraiser, he was great. It just, there was some issues with the appraisal. So the buyer pays for the appraisal. So it is their appraisal. When the appraisal comes back, and it can be anywhere from, 2 or 3 days to a week. Isn't this pathetic? Don't sit here and snore. If the property is valued at or above the selling price of the home, the contract selling price of the home, the appraiser will say it's at value. They generally are not going to give you a dollar amount. You do need to know that if you have a VA financing, if your lender's VA, the VA appraisal will look for, a VA appraisal is different than an FHA, and it's different than a conventional appraisal. So these are things that you want to, you can do a lot of research on what are things that are typically called out on a VA appraisal. You can talk to real estate agents, and they can tell you things that are generally called out on a VA appraisal. Doesn't mean that those things are going to get called out, because this appraiser is licensed, and he is a professional, and he's going to do his job, and they're human just like you and me. If the appraisal comes back and it is not at value, means it's less than, okay? This is why it's a nail biter, because every real estate agent in the transaction, the buyer and the seller are like, pardon my sweet little dog, she's over here snoring. This is the snorer. Yes, you're a pansy. Everybody wants that appraisal to appraise at value. Everybody wants it to be where it needs to be, so we can just close this transaction. It's in the buyers have their home and the sellers can go on their way. Okay, this is what happens. So let's say it doesn't appraise at value. So now we have a decision to make. And there are a couple things. Are you going to behave? There's a couple things that occur. If the appraisal does not come back at value, that means that the buyers get to put in a notice of low appraisal. And they will send that over to the seller. And a few things can occur. Let's say the appraisal came in at $450,000. Remember, we're talking about a $500,000 property in this example. Well, the lender is not going to loan $500,000 on a property that's only worth $450,000. Don't happen. So a notice of low appraisal gives the seller notice that the property is not worth that. Okay? And they have a few options. The first thing they can do is they can lower the price of their home to $450,000. That way, the sellers get the value of the home, which is $450,000. The buyers get the home at $450,000, and the parties both, move forward in the transaction. So they can lower the price of the home. The sellers can look at the low appraisal, and at that point, that notice of low appraisal, they should be getting a copy of the appraisal. They can pay for a new appraisal to be done. It's called a reappraisal. But if you do this, if you are a seller and you get a notice of low approval, this reappraisal is not a guarantee that the lender is going to use that new appraisal. So your real estate professional should be doing their job and, finding out, is there an appraisal that we know that the lender is going to accept? Are there, how does this work? Because there's no point in going to the expense if the lender isn't even going to use it. The third option they have is they can lower the price of the home to the appraised amount, and the buyer can then put, in this example, $50,000 down, so that the seller gets $500,000. The buyer only finances $450,000, and everybody goes their way. Generally, once an appraisal is done, closing doesn't take more than about a week. But again, each real estate transaction is different. The real estate market is a living, breathing beast. 'Tis the fiery dragon. I'm teasing. Little ups, little downs, things that happen. No real estate transaction is the same. No two real estate transactions are the same. So, this is generally the last contingency. Once the appraisal, let's say it came back at value. Great! Yay! All the parties get a hold of, buyers and sellers, agents get a hold of the title company. Everything is forwarded over to them, and then the lender then prints the final docs and sends it to the title company, and everybody makes their signing appointment, and everybody's happy. And we'll just leave it at that point, because we like happy buyers and happy sellers. And so this is basically appraisals, and there are little tiny finesses in any real estate transaction. I always tell my clients there's a speed bump. Every real estate transaction has a bump, and we're going to hit it, and you'll know that we've hit it, and we're going to decide and what's going on, and then we're going to determine how to get around it, under it, over it, through it, and then move forward to making you happy. Let's getting you where you need to be. So I am so grateful that you spent this time with me. I would love it if you would like and subscribe. We have lots of more great content, and would love to see your comments. And I'll look forward to seeing you on our next video. Thanks so much. Have a great day.